is what does Islam want from us?
This is ultimately a doctrinal question, because every religion has worldviews. Some religions have nothing to do with the secular or things like expansion or politics, and some do. Islam happens to be very much rooted in a political worldview. It's not so much as a spiritual exercise as it is what you do in the now. So of course Muslims have to do things like pray and fast and Hajj and all this sort of thing, but things like jihad, which of course has a very pejorative, negative connotation today from a non-Muslim point of view, because it just means war. But from a Muslim point of view, it's seen as a good thing, because jihad is you're struggling to expand the beautiful rule of Islam into non-Muslim regions, which are considered living in, it's called jahiliyyah, which means ignorance. So my point is, Muslims see jihad as a good thing. This is, we're helping you because you're an infidel, and we want to bring the goodness of Islam to you. And that has been always a part of the religion, doctrinally and historically. So I would say, based on the historical precedent, Islam, of course, conquered and expanded. Virtually the entire Islamic world today is on non-Muslim regions. Egypt, all the way to Morocco, Syria, the Middle East, Asia Minor, Turkey. All of these were actually older Christian regions than Europe, but they were conquered. Spain was conquered, Balkans, all the way up to Vienna. So that's what Islam has wanted. And now, of course, it's being facilitated by the West itself via migration and things of that sort. But ultimately, Islam wants, and there's a saying in Arabic, which is, Islam is not here to coexist or to be a second. It's here to take over and rule. And again, you can't understand this without realizing, from a Muslim point of view, this is altruistic, this is good, this is not an evil thing. So that's what I'd say they'd want.
And there is one theory that, and I'm just wondering whether it's true or not, that the Islam itself is a religion of peace, and only the radical Islam poses a threat to the West. Is it true or not?
It's not true. This is a Western-made construct that does not in any way, shape, or form apply to authentic Islam. Islam is Islam, and there is no moderate or radical. This is a false dichotomy that we've created to rationalize and make sense of Islam because no one wants to accept that Islam is inherently, fundamentally radical. So what we do is we claim that the Muslims who do not practice Islam, who are basically secularized cultural Muslims and who are possibly assimilated, but they're not really being Muslim. We say they're moderate Muslims. They're actually just secular Muslims, cultural Muslims, nominal Muslims. Then we say the Muslims who truly practice Islam, we call them radical. Okay, but the religion itself is radical. Because, like I said, for example, punishing up to killing the apostate, the Muslim, if you're born into Islam, you're a Muslim. The Muslim who tries to leave Islam becomes a Christian, for example. Yeah, that's part of the religion. Muhammad himself says it. It's part of the law. That's just one example. Polygamy, okay, concubinage, sexual enslavement of infidel women during warfare. All of this is completely part of the religion. So when a Muslim does that, how is that radical? It's just the religion is radical. But again, this is a false construct that Westerners have made to make Islam more palatable to them.
So it's interesting, you claim that if a Muslim believer takes the Quran and the Hadith very seriously, as a word of God, it commands you to act in this way, and you have to do it this way, you cannot be a moderate man. As a religious man.
Not by what Western people mean by moderate. Moderate essentially means, from a Western point of view, that you can you can assimilate and live with sincerely Western secular laws. Well, Islam is its own law. We hear about Sharia or Sharia law all the time. Well, Sharia is basically Islam. Islam is just the name of the religion. Sharia is how you live it. And so Islam basically has its own laws for Muslims, and many of these do contradict what we would call Western law, secular law. Okay, if you're a Christian, if you're a Jew, and you live under an Islamic rule, you don't have equal citizenship rights. Of course, that contradicts the Western paradigm. That's another example. Women don't have equal rights. It's open. In courts, a woman's testimony is not equal to a man. Okay, so these sorts of things, again, that's not radical, that's just Islam. But this is why, but people are just, they want to insist that there's a difference and only a few minority are doing this sort of thing. And I don't know what the number is. Maybe they're not the majority, but the point is, when Muslims follow what we call radical, they're not being radical, they're just being pious.
I see. Masses of Muslims living in Europe now, by migration and the demography, they are overgrows, their population overgrows the European white population, original population, and many of them try to integrate into the society which accepted them. But in your claim, it means like the true Muslims, they don't even want to integrate into societies because they don't want by their religion respect the Western values and traditions. Is that claim true?
Yeah, that's the claim, but it's very nuanced and one has to understand. So I'm not saying that this is a DNA thing. I'm not saying if you're born Muslim that you want this. There are people who are named Muhammad and they do live a secular life and they can potentially assimilate. But then there are others who are named Muhammad and they follow the Prophet Muhammad, and they don't assimilate. So in the end, this is why it gets tricky. It's in the religion. The question is this person following the religion or not? And we can say this about Christians and Jews and other people of every religion. You have amongst the Jews the ultra-Orthodox, and then you have the Reformed secular, right? Obviously, the Reformed secular can be assimilated wherever, whereas the ultra-Orthodox might not. Same thing with other religions. So this isn't something peculiar to Islam. You always have the group that follows it and the group that's, prioritizes living and getting by in their society, and it's the same with Islam. But for those who do follow it, yes, it's very tribal. Islam actually commands Muslims in the Quran to have hatred for non-Muslims. This is Quran 60 verse 4. Okay, so, because it's tribal. It was founded by a tribal man, Muhammad, in the 7th century, and so basically he took tribalism and re-articulated it through a theological paradigm. So now the other is no longer just the other, he's the infidel, and the tribe isn't a blood tribe, it's all the Muslims. So they even have this in the doctrines. You have it's called Dar al-Islam, which is the abode, the world of Islam, and Dar al-Harb, which is the world of non-Islam, and the two must always fight until the home of Islam conquers the other one.
But most of the Muslims in Europe are assimilated Muslims. They are not so serious by religion, as you mentioned that. But even if this tendency, in 20, 30 year time, do you share the concern of many experts and average man that the overgrowing population of Muslims and the demographical change, the Europe's political, cultural, religious landscape will be changed radically in 20, 30 years' time? Are you afraid of this?
Well, it's already happened. It's already happened, but it's going to be much worse, of course. The more any country becomes Islamic by population, the more it becomes Islamic by culture and by society. We see this already in places. I traveled recently in England, which has large Muslim populations, and I was surprised to see everywhere I looked they had foot washing for Muslims for prayer. So, that's a society that is being Islamified.
And you are not talking about no-go zones on Muslim...
Not regular airport.
Yeah.
Okay, so that means they are acquiescing to Islamic, basically, culture and society because the numbers are growing. And there's another thing I should add to clarify about my earlier point about who's radical and who's not. Even within Islam itself, there's a doctrine and a teaching which says when you are outnumbered and weak, you can be what we call secular. You can be moderate. You don't have to enforce jihad because it's not the right time. And so there's a lot of doctrines and teachings, and historically this has also happened where Muslims would behave as friends amongst non-Muslims because they were the minority. And then when that number grows, it starts changing and the truth starts coming out. And I think we're already seeing this in a lot of countries. So, again, this doesn't mean there are truly moderates who are just nominal. So I'm just showing you how complex the scenario is. There's the radicals who are open. There's the ones who are not religious and who we call moderate. And then in the middle, you have those who are shifting alliances depending on where things go. And if the radicals start getting stronger, they join them.
And what is the worst scenario in this aspect for the case of UK or France in 20 years' time?
The UK, they claim, I don't know, 10, 12%, which doesn't sound a lot, but of course they're very concentrated, so it looks a lot. But I think the number is bigger. But I think if it reaches something like 25%, that's the end of it. It's going to be essentially a nation that prioritizes Islam before anything else. And as that number grows and as Muslims become stronger, the tolerance for the natives is going to become even more severe. Or less tolerance, basically. So that's why these countries are either, places like England are either going to be conquered, okay, peacefully.
You use the word conquer, right?
Of course.
This is, we are sitting in a bastion called the Golden Bastion. It was in the Turkish times when Hungary was conquered by the Turkish forces for 150 years. Yeah. And we know that. We know the history, Hungarians. I'm a Hungarian man. And still, I'm sitting nearby the Turkish wall, but we kind of not immune to the naivety that they can come back, right? It's very strange.
Well, and this is why history is very important. This is why that old adage, those who forget history are doomed to repeat it, is actually manifesting itself in Western European nations. Even the same thing with France. This is the home of the Franks, the ones who are actually the heart of the Crusades against Islam. And now it's even worse, apparently, than England or the UK or Britain, as far as the Muslims overrunning places like Paris and things like that. So, Islam never changed. It still has the same mentality. But what has changed is the West, which once used to fight back like Hungary did. And this is why Hungary still remembers. It was very recent. The occupation by the Ottomans. And now the West has forgotten about its heritage. It sees its own heroes who defended it as the bad guys. It sees Muslims as misunderstood victims. And now it's and all these are lies on top of lies, manufactured lies by design, meant to manipulate exactly what we're seeing. And it's basically a slow motion suicide, and they don't know what they're doing.
I see we were talking about the European situation, but one question about the Middle East, because you are a Middle East expert, and we saw many trials of jihadist Islamist movements to conquer swath of territories like Al-Qaeda, by ISIS, by Al-Nusra, and we can continue with the names of the organizations, but they didn't succeed. So the Arabic governments, with the military help with the US and the Western powers, always tried to, they were successful to push back these forces. But is the caliphate as an idea, is it an impossible project, or in 20 years' time it can be a reality, unfortunately?
Yeah, it was a historical reality, and we had different manifestations of caliphates all throughout history. Like every other human polity, sometimes it falls apart, and there's all sort of circumstances where they clash and it gets taken over, etc. But it is an idea that is pivotal to Islam, the caliphate. It just comes from the word khalifa. It comes from successor. So after Muhammad, you had a successor who was the new political leader. The first one was Abu Bakr. And so a caliphate is based on governance by a man who is basically a religious leader following in the footsteps of Muhammad. That is the normal sort of paradigm for Islam. That's what is expected. So of course Muslims would love to have that, but this is what I mean. You still have the political clashes, okay, which means who's going to be the leader? Is it going to be the Turks? Is it going to be the Arabs? Is it going to be the Persians, who are Shia, which is another, so obviously won't be them. So you do have those clashes which have happened historically, which I guess that's the good news. It won't make it a very easy thing, but it is the ideal that I'm sure they all want to realize.
And is it possible?
Yeah, anything's possible. Yeah, it's possible. They did it before several times. I mean, we've had caliphates for the history of Islam. We've had a lot more caliphates than we didn't. The last one was abolished right around 1924. So that's not like a century ago.
The Quran teaches, the Muslim teachings teach the believers that the previous books, the Old Testament, the Torah, the New Testament, the teachings of Jesus were kind of originated from the real God. But the final revelation of God was through the book of Quran, which was revealed through an angel to Muhammad. Is it right? So they consider the former books godly,
They believe that there were scriptures and books were given to Ahl Kitab, the people of the book. Primarily, this means Jews and Christians. So yes, the Old and New Testament, they believe was in origin divine. However, the Bible that exists today, which is used by Jews, the Torah, and the Christians, according to the Muslims, is wrong. It's been intentionally distorted. So, for example, when we grab the New Testament and it talks about Jesus being crucified and resurrecting and calling him the Son of God, Muslims believe that was added in later. It's false.
So Jesus was the true prophet, but Apostle Paul was a false prophet because he distorted the original message of Jesus.
Right. It could be that, or someone changed what Paul said in the Bible. But the bottom line is the Bible that we have today, according to Muslims, is false. Okay, it was originally true, but the core teachings that we have are been added later. So the Quran, which wasn't a book revealed, it was a recitation from the angel Gabriel to Muhammad, was supposedly the new correction, bringing it back to the way it was. Okay, so now when you look at the Quran and you read it, and it talks about everyone from Abraham and Moses, Adam, all the way to Jesus, it talks about them, and there's some similarities with the Bible, but then there's a lot of differences. So the differences, according to the Muslims, is yes, this is the correction because what you said is the wrong thing, and so Muhammad came to bring it back to the truth. This isn't a methodical science because they'll look at the older books, and no matter how old it is, they'll say, okay, it was distorted 1,500 years ago even. It's still wrong.
Yeah.
And so the Quran, makes it even worse because the Quran is written much later, and there's a lot of problems with how the Quran was written, and there were different versions, and they ended one caliph burned most of them and kept one. So there's all sorts of problems with the Quran itself.
10 years ago, I was shooting a documentary in Jerusalem, and mostly from the aspect from as the Palestinians see that. And I had a Palestinian driver, and we were driving through the Mount of Olives and looking down to the Temple Mount. We saw the Al-Aqsa complex, which is the foundation is a Herodian temple, the Jewish temple, and I told the driver that, look, you are not believing the artifacts, but these stones are originated from Jesus' time, from the Herod temple, and he told me that absolutely incorrect. This is Jewish myth.
It's just indoctrination, because they're taught when they grow up as children in the madrasas that, okay, anything the Christians and the Jews say to you, it says this in the Quran. It says the Christians and the Jews will not be happy with you, Muslims, until you believe what they believe. Okay, so they're taught from a very young age that if their books or their teachings in any way, shape, or even if their archaeological findings contradict what we teach, that's because they're liars, naturally, and they're trying to they're still distorting the truth because they want to corrupt us.
Do you believe that there will be a generation, maybe this generation, the young people in Palestinian territories, in Arabic countries, even in Israel, that they can overcome this kind of denial?
There's many people who convert out of Islam. Some become Christians, some become atheists. This is a real phenomena as well. So this is why it's a mixed bag. It's never so easy. It's not all of them are this or all of them are that. There's lots of things going on. At the same time, there's Westerners who are converting to Islam because they're not satisfied with secularism and materialism. And so in that way, they're gaining ranks that way too. So, Islam itself, Islam is built on a house of cards, which is why they have laws against what's called blasphemy and apostasy. Blasphemy is essentially anything you say against Islam is blasphemy. Going in front of Muslims and declaring Jesus Christ as the Son of God is blasphemy because Muhammad says the opposite, and you're saying he's a liar. So everything has to be contained, and you can't question it, because once you really start looking into the history of Islam and the way the Quran and the Hadith were put together, it starts falling apart because there's a lot of question marks, a lot of missing data, a lot of counter narratives to what Muslims are taught.
Ibrahim, Raymond, you just told me that some Muslims find other religion and leaving the Islam, which is a dangerous thing by the Islam itself. I don't know whether you met Mossab Hassan Youssef, the son of the Hamas founder, and he told me, and it is written in his book, that the reason he changed religion, became a Christian, was one sentence in the New Testament. And I'm wondering what is perception of this. And he quoted one sentence from Jesus: love your enemy. And he told me that from growing up as a Muslim, a radical Muslim family, a jihadist Islamist family, hate your enemy was the main teaching of the foundation of the religion. And he told me that love your enemy is so irrational for a Muslim mind that he needed to think about this for months, and he became a Christian because he thought that this is so transcendent, so not instinctive, so not a human instinct, so not manly thinking, that is above all the thoughts. Have you met this kind of conversion stories before?
Oh, yeah. And it makes perfect sense, because the thing about Islam is, if you look at it, it's very man-made. The earliest Christian theologians, from all the way from, St. John of Damascus all the way to Aquinas, when they studied Islam, what they understood is this man is an imposter who created a religion that gives men what they want. It gives them wealth, plunder, women. Okay, you can exercise your anger, you can go kill, you can, subjugate, conquer, seize women, seize property, and then you're a good guy and you go to heaven. So it was seen as a man-made religion. So it makes perfect sense. But of course, man-made religions do not necessarily bring the satisfaction of the soul that Christianity would, even though, as you were pointing out, Christianity, its teachings are counterintuitive to the human mind, and that's what makes it divine. Love your enemy. Who can think of that? That's so counter to how we naturally are. And so when you have a religion that says that, and you think about it, and you do it, and it's a satisfying, elevating, edifying experience, then you start, I think, appreciating the truths of that religion versus the other.
Raymond, we came to the final point, and my last question is about the future, because there are some prophecies in the Quran, there are some prophecies in the Bible, and there are parallelism. Actually, I'm taking the third religion, Judaism, too, because it's about the Messiah, the person of the Messiah, because I see that I'm familiar with the Jewish point of view that the Messiah will come, and as a Christian I'm familiar with Jesus' position. This is the second coming of Jesus as a king. But the Muslim version of this, the Mahdi problem, is there any parallelism with the three types of Messiah will come? Differences, similarities? Can you explain this complex situation?
Sure. Well, the similarities, again, and people who try to connect and show you how Muslims love Jesus, as Tucker Carlson famously said, some of the similarities are they believe that Jesus will he will come during Judgment Day. He's a major role. He's going to fight the Dajjal, who's like sort of if you want, an Antichrist figure. And I believe he'll kill him. And so that's one aspect where you can see, but the differences are just that. So other things that Jesus will do when he comes is he will break all the crosses, kill all the pigs, and cancel what's called jizya. Jizya is in the Quran 929, which says fight the people of the book, Jews and Christians, until they either convert or pay jizya, pay tribute, and live as second-class citizens. So by canceling that, Jesus is basically saying now Christians and Jews have to either become Muslim or die. They can't pay anymore. Okay, so this is, again, an excellent example of how different, the Jesus and all the prophets in Islam are from the biblical version. He's breaking the cross because he wants to show all the silly Christians he was never crucified, and he never died, and he never was resurrected, because that's what Islam teaches. And he's killing the pigs because, Islam is halal, it's kosher, it doesn't eat pigs, and doing that. So, but also the Mahdiism, the Mahdi is the guided one. He also comes in and, brings some sort of rule, Islamic rule to the world. It's actually not unlike, I would say, Christianity and Judaism. It's not a very clear vision. It's just very snippets and ideas from hadith. This isn't in the Quran. And it also depends if you look at the Sunni or Shia version.
I see. So there is a clear contradiction between the two, the Judeo-Christian tradition and the Islam perception. So they are not waiting for the same guy.
No, they're not. They're not waiting, for Jesus. I mean, the Jewish Messiah, we don't know who that is. But they're waiting for Jesus in a different capacity because he's a prophet, but he's not coming to judge as the Son of God. Far from that. He's coming to actually punish Christians.
I see. Raymond, thank you very much for the deep analysis. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And thank you for watching us. Bye-bye.